And I've got a couple of screens going, so if I'm not looking directly at the camera, please excuse me. I've got some information that I want to talk through, and so a little bit of a presentation to begin with. And look, when I start this, there's always the question around why introduce KPIs? And KPIs, key performance indicators. I also don't mind that people have a number of different terminology and words or language for them. Success indicators, key performance indicators, whatever you call them in your business, I don't mind. And I think we changed the language mostly just to appease those who have had really bad experiences with KPIs in the past. So I don't mind what you would call them. I'm just going to be using the terminology as KPI today. So look, if we ask that question, why KPIs, and why do we need them in our businesses? And I guess this comes back to me from a leadership point of view. As leaders in a business, we've got a few jobs to do. The first and foremost is in a leadership position, we need to set the expectation of what we want to achieve. We need to provide the vision of where the organization is going, and then set the expectation for everybody within that organization on the things like performance, on conduct, on standards, and all of those expectations need to be really clearly made to a team member. If they're not, what happens is you get a really enthusiastic team member on, and you don't set really clear expectations, and the team member runs off in one direction, and that's, it's only chance that they are aligned to your way and your organization's way. So first and foremost, leadership must set the expectation. Then they need to put the tools in place and to be able to support and enable those employees to do the right thing, to meet those expectations. Once that's in place and we've had those conversations, and so we set the expectation and we provided the employee with the tools, then leaders can get out of their way and let the team members run, let the team members take it forward. So having good intention as a leader is not enough. And so when we document, and part of that expectation can be set in a position description, part of the expectation is set in the strategic planning, and so you're outlining the vision and the purpose and those values and the culture of the organization and where we're heading, and then at a tactical level about what we're trying to achieve on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. Once those things are in place, you've got a really good framework for being able to get out of their way and let your team really excel at what they're doing. So why KPIs? KPIs come into it when we are trying to hold and track accountability and responsibility, and to understand on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis, are we winning? Are we not winning, not losing, or are we losing? Are we making headway towards our objectives and our goals, or are we not? Are we on the wrong track, and do we need some course correction? And this is where KPIs come into it. So the definition that we use for a KPI is that it is a measurable value that shows an organization's progress towards achieving a key business objective. And organizations use key performance indicators, KPIs, as a way to track whether their business objectives are on track, behind track, ahead of track, or whether they've been achieved. And it's a really common language to use use KPIs. When KPIs are used poorly, it's pretty clear that that they're used as more of a stick than as a aligning force. And we like to show that KPIs are only as effective as the action or behavior that it inspires. So there's a number of rules that we need to talk about when it comes to KPIs and KPI introduction and their use. And the first few are, look, we mustn't measure everything that moves. You only measure what you want to move, what you want to change, or what you want to focus on. A KPI is only effective if an individual has the ability to impact it. And this is one of the big points from my point of view, from where I look at KPIs. There's no point in giving a KPI to somebody that they actually don't have a direct ability to impact or influence. That's just a reporting, and that person is just providing an administrative task, producing a report on something that they don't have an impact on or can't influence. The next one is to seeking alignment. So the KPIs must be aligned to the strategy, the vision, the purpose of the organization. And the KPI must encourage or incentivize the person using it to walk in line with their standards, the values, the other expectations around the culture and the performance of the job. A KPI needs a time frame. Now, this both happens in terms of the how frequently we measure it or how frequently we review it, and a KPI can have a lifespan as well. There are some KPIs that we introduce into businesses that are only until something is fixed and becomes something that happens on a regular basis, and then that KPI can fall away. So KPIs are absolutely not a set and forget. And the lead and result indicators. So a leading indicator and a resulting outcome measure. So we talk about leading and lag indicators. Net profit over a period of time is a complete lag indicator. It is looking in the rearview mirror. The work has been done, but a leading indicator might be number of phone calls a day that a sales consultant might do. So that is something that they can affect, and it is a leading indicator. If I make 50 phone calls today, I'm gonna have a better chance of reaching my target than if I make only 5 phone calls a day. So the difference between understanding the difference between leading indicators and lagging, or lead and result indicators are important in that. Now, net profit is rarely used as an effective KPI because it is a lagging indicator and it is looking in the rearview mirror. And so once we've reported on our net profit, you can't influence it anymore. And so taking a step back from net profit, you might be looking at volume and margin as your KPIs that then will result in a net profit as the outcome. So understanding those things is important as well. All right, the next thing that I want to touch on is something that we use. We've borrowed this, and there are a couple of very good. Bernard Marr is probably the leading expert on KPIs, and he developed this thing that he terms key performance question. And I'm going to show you some key performance questions as some examples in a little bit. But essentially, the key performance question is the question that leads to the KPI. So they're really great building blocks for good KPIs. In effect, they answer the question, to what extent do we, or how does a business X, Y, or Z? And it's that question that helps us then find the KPI that answers the question. So how well is focused HR at delivering consistently strong experience with our clients? And if we're trying to measure that, then we might use a net promoter score, for example, as the KPI that measures to what extent does Focus HR deliver exceptional experiences to our customers. Another one might be, actually, I'll wait. We'll have some examples in a little bit around the specific KPQs. So the key performance question really is a way of kind of finding out how we then work towards developing KPIs themselves. Where we want to start with the place that I like to begin with KPIs is working from a business level and understanding a few things. I believe that we can't develop good KPIs on an organization level or at an individual level until we understand what the flow of the organization is. And so that backbone of how our organization works. Once we understand that backbone, so in our case, it is inquiry through to advice, maybe a project, then some kind of outcome with the client or the organization, and then an invoice. When it comes to and we've got a couple from my department, it is around strategic development and strategic planning with organizations. And so that flow is inquiry and understanding that what an organization is seeking out of strategy, the preparation work, the delivery of a strategic workshop, and then the follow-up over 12 months and the review, and that's my flow of the organization. We're going to use some examples later on around charity organisation. The flow of a charity organisation is to drum up support and donors and create some value and get donation dollars in, and then spend those donation dollars wisely for a particular purpose-driven outcome. An airline the flow is to take passengers from A to B and make sure their luggage it follows them through, make sure that that's done safely, and so making that there's that flow. We're also going to look at potentially a parts distributor who is delivering parts. Their flow is to take an inquiry, understand what part is required, find the part for the client or the customer, deliver it, and get them back on their job. So understanding the key process that drives our organization is very, very important. Once we know that, then we can start looking at the six areas of the strategic focus around KPIs, and we'll go into those in a little bit, but essentially they're things like financial, people KPIs, process or operational supply chain KPIs, maybe corporate social responsibility, and sales and marketing. So 6 areas that we can dive into KPI development. Then we're looking at developing key performance questions. So understanding what is it that we are trying to measure, or what is it that we're trying to understand or improve in our business. And then we look at developing KPIs off those KPQs. And then lastly, we set the targets around what we're trying to achieve with those. So once we've got our KPIs in place, then we're looking at, right, what is it, a band that we are expecting? Is it a target that we're putting in place? And we start measuring those KPIs and then providing the feedback. So those 6 areas that we can start as a bit of a starting place for developing KPQs and KPIs: financial area, customer focus, that process, operations and supply chain, sales and marketing, people, HR and safety, and corporate social responsibility. So they're the 6 areas. Again, this is a framework developed by Bernard Marr, M-A-R-R. And he actually gives, and I'll show you some of these. He gives the top 75 KPIs used across these 6 areas, and readily available. And if you follow up this webinar with Eloise, we can give you that list of those 75 KPIs as a starting place. Comes with a big word of warning: absolutely, please do not try to implement 75 KPIs in your business. That would be a disaster. We'd have a HR nightmare on our hand as well. So the KPQs and how it works is we want to use open-ended questions around things like, how well does X organization do A, B, or C? Or to what extent does Focus HR deliver in time and on full? To what extent do our customers engage with us throughout the process? You're asking questions, and two great starting points are how well and to what extent. So let's have a look at some of these KPQs. These are long lists. I'm not going to labor on this. Please, just a quick email to Eloise after this, and we'll give you all of these questions. So, from a financial point of view, net profit, if it is, and occasionally it can be used as a decent KPI, but that one comes through with a word of warning as well. But the key performance question is, to what extent are we generating bottom line results? Another one that I like on this is return on investment, about halfway down. How well are we generating sustainable profits? And that sustainable component could be on sustainable relationships, sustainable from an environmental point of view, sustainable from a profit point of view, sustainable from a we're not burning out our team point of view. Another one on there is cash conversion cycle. So quite third from the bottom. And that the question that we ask around that is, how well are we doing at maintaining a healthy cash position? And that we could look at cash conversion cycle. Another question on a financial one might be, how well are we managing our debtors in terms of getting money back in once we've sent an invoice? And that could be measured as debtor days, the day from invoice due date to the actual date that someone pays you on an average. And some businesses work on a 2 to 3 days debtor days, which is fantastic. Other businesses, especially in the construction or mining area, might be working on 90 days or 120 days, which is really difficult if you're talking about cash flow. All right. I expect if there are any questions, just put yourself off mute and dive into it. I'm very happy to pause and have a look at those things if they come up. Oh, sorry, Catherine, I missed that one as well. We are recording this, and so we'll get a copy out to you. She couldn't hear us. Okay, next section is customer. So lovely one to start with is net promoter score, and the KPQ, the key performance question, might be, how likely is it that a customer will recommend our business to somebody else? A really good, strong measure for customer service, customer relations, and that could be used as the the net promoter score, NPS. Another one that is commonly used is customer lifetime value, CLV. How well do we understand the financial value from our customer relationships? If we have a look at operations, supply chain and processes, the bottom one there, to what extent are our customers getting what they want on time and when they want it? And that is delivery in full on time, or a DIFOT rate, which is a really commonly used one. Another one is Sigma 6 or a rework or defect rate, and that is how capable are our processes of delivering error-free work. Great one for manufacturing, for when there's a high level of turnover or volume. Dashing through these, I just want to give you some examples, that's all. Again, if you want these questions, please just email Eloise and we'll get them out to you. Sales and marketing, I like the bottom one, the conversion rate. To what extent are we able to convert a potential customer into an actual job? And that's a simple conversion rate. How many phone calls or how much time does it take to convert one customer on average? So you measure it over time, and you work out that conversion rate. How many tenders how many dollars of tenders do you submit to get $1 of work generated? That's your conversion rate. Another one is cost per lead. So to what extent are the costs for generating new customers justified? And you can quickly see that that has connections to lifetime value or customer lifetime value, and so forth. Number of quite good questions in that. From a HR point of view, a similar one to the Net Promoter Score is an employee Net Promoter Score. How likely are your people to recommend you as a company to work for? That's a great one. Absentee Bradford factor, interesting one. It measures to what extent is unauthorized absenteeism a problem in our business, and it gives you kind of a benchmark score, which is an interesting one to look at as well. One that we use in our business at Focus HR, how productive are our people? And we use the measure of revenue per employee measured on a full-time employee equivalent. You got things like regrettable turnover, unproductive days, to what extent can we minimize unproductive days, etc. And then the last one that I want to touch on is corporate social responsibility. And look, there's a number of things in this. One of the ones that I like is supply chain miles or supply chain kilometers. To what extent are we minimizing the amount of waste? To what extent are we minimizing the environmental impact of our business? And we might ask this follow-up question, to what extent can we buy locally by minimizing the supply chain kilometers used? All right, if there's no questions in that, I want to move on to getting practical. And this is the part that I really want to stress and focus on. And that is when we want to develop KPIs in a business, the first and the most important thing is to look at your business KPI or critical numbers first. And I've got some examples here of some businesses, and I'd really like to encourage you to have, come off mute and have a conversation about these things as we go through them. When we as a business understand what our key driver is, what our most important number for the business is, that is a brilliant starting place for us to be able to ask questions around individuals and teams, and we cascade these KPIs down through the business, because we're asking the question, how does an individual influence from their role, influence that business level KPI? Let me give you an example. So Oxfam they're a huge not-for-profit international charity. Their purpose and their vision is a world without poverty. They're not promising that, but their drive is to eliminate poverty in the world. And their KPI is largely around their ability to increase the value of every donated dollar. So if we look at that more simply, Oxfam want to take $1 of one donated dollar and turn it into a day's worth of food, a week's worth of food, and so take $1 and multiply it across how they deliver their services around food, shelter, medicine, etc. So how do they maximize their return of funded dollars by looking at how do we increase the value? Now, in the past, charity organizations have been measured around their percentage productivity, so their percentage effectiveness, and it wasn't uncommon to see a charity or a non-government organization who for every dollar they spent could only tell you that they actually delivered 20 cents or 30 cents in the dollar. And a large amount of that funded dollars went to administration, went to marketing, went to a whole heap of other overheads and costs. We are intolerant nowadays of organizations that operate like that. We apply far more pressure around, no. If I'm donating $1, I want that dollar to be stretched and have a much bigger impact than $1 worth. And so Oxfam measure their ability to increase the value of every dollar funded or gifted. And so when they're talking about their marketing team, they're saying, how do we minimize the cost that we spend and maximize the impact that we have? And so they're really challenging every employee in that team to deliver more with less. And so there's this real drive. Now, once you've got those core numbers, that big business KPI, it's much easier then to cascade down through the teams and have people making better, smarter decisions because they know that they're trying to impact that big number. And then we can ask the question, right, how do we influence and impact that business KPI at a divisional level or at a team level or at an individual level themselves? Let me give you another example. So Southwest Airlines, an amazing organization who really revolutionized and transformed particularly the domestic airline market. Now, in the 90s, they had their KPI, their big ticket item, their business KPI was wheels up. And what it meant was that they worked out that when they were on the ground, they weren't making any money, but when they were in flight, they were making lots of money. So their big KPI for the organization was they measured wheels up. How much time, what was the ratio between time spent in the air and time spent on the ground? And it worked brilliantly for a very short period of time. What happened was that they quickly became the most profitable domestic airline, commercial airline in the United States. And things were going brilliantly. They were the fastest through the terminal. They were the quickest on ground. They rotated their planes, and they were just flying constantly. And their uptime or their productive rates were way better. I mean, way better than any of the competition. But what happened was it was an unbalanced KPI. And what they started doing was, passengers would be literally walking down the tunnel, and they would close the doors and back out and fly because this wheels up KPI was so important to them. And so they started destroying relationships. They started increasing costs around delivering luggage because they would close the gates after people had checked in, but before people had arrived at the gate, and they would be wheels up and gone with this passenger's luggage. And so they were having to transport and fly luggage all over the country, and their passengers hated it. Their passengers hated the fact that there was a large percentage getting dropped off these flights. So what they did was introduce a second balancing KPI. This is my point on this example, is Wheels Up was fantastic for productivity, but actually it hurt their relationship and their reputation. So they introduced the Net Promoter Score to balance that out. And now, even today, there are two KPIs that everybody works towards is the Wheels Up, so maximum time spent on ground, and Net Promoter Score. And those two, when they've got those two in balance, they're maximizing their ability and their productivity, and also maintaining those important relationships. So that's when it works twofold. Let's have an example of a producer, and it could be it could be an almond farm, or it could be an egg farm. Let's have a look at an egg producer. An egg producer, their KPI is the ability to turn raw product or feed into the maximum amount of egg. maximum weight of egg. And their business is as simple and as complicated as that. How do we turn the minimum amount of feed, and what is that ratio, and what is the formula, the recipe for the best feed, and how do we turn that into the maximum number or the maximum weight of eggs? And when you start looking at a business like that, then it starts making sense. They've got a department that obviously puts together this recipe of feed, whether it's a combination of barley and wheat and millet and whatever else goes into chook feed. And then they've got the breeding team and the hatchery and the department that looks over the health of chickens, of the chickens. And so all of those people are trying to maximize their ability to impact this KPI. And so the person looking after the health of the birds needs to maximize the bird's health and talk to the producer of the grain to make sure that the bird's getting the optimum diet, not too much because that has an impact, not too little because that has an impact, and also working on the health of the bird, because the healthier the bird, the better the product and so forth. So all the way down the supply chain, we're looking at this overarching KPI, and it helps that having that one big KPI in the business helps then determine how do I impact or influence that by doing my part in this job. Two more examples. Sorry. Let's have a look at a specialized parts seller, and this might be someone like Tilly's Crawler Parts, it might be Cat Distributor, it might be John Holland or John Deere. And their after-sales service or their parts distribution, the key for them, their KPI is a mixture of three things. It's not okay just to isolate one of these. It's a balanced approach. It needs the right part at the right price at the right time or on time. And so if we look at this, you can quickly see that you've got to identify, and you might have an operator who's calling in about a particular cat machine. He can describe the machine, but you're not going to bring the machine into the parts distributor to assess. So you need to be able to interpret what the operator is saying, and then define and do some assessment, some diagnostics to be able to work out, righto, probably the right part is A, B, or C, or a combination of those. Then to be able to get that part at the right price for whatever the person is looking for, and then deliver it in time or within the right amount of time. If you've got if you've got a big header, for example, who needs a part replaced, and they're operating, it could be tens of thousands of dollars a day that operation is lacking for what might be $100 part. So it's that combination of all three, and if you get those unbalanced, you can quickly see that if you've got a salesperson who's only interested in getting it on time but has no issue with who doesn't focus on the right part or the right price, he's going to bundle together, he's going to take a shotgun approach, bundle together a whole heap of product and ship it out to them because this guy's screaming down the phone that he needs these parts, and not going to worry about the right part or the right price, and it's going to fall over. Equally, if someone's too focused on the right part and spends too long trying to interrogate and assess and analyze to make sure, and the farmer's sitting there going, but I need these things and I don't know, we don't have the time to assess which ones it is, get them out to me. So that KPI then starts cascading down, and you look at your sales team and your product pullers and all of the supply chain that's involved in that, and the transport and all the rest of it. You can quickly see how you can have an influence on those right part, right price, on time, if you understand though that high level KPI. Last example. Tax accountants. There's a great accounting firm that I really like in Brisbane, Inspire Accountants, and they publish every year on their website around tax time. They've got this ticking number that is showing everybody how much tax they have saved for their clients, and they've got a target around the tax, and so they display their KPI loud and proud on their website every year. And so their main driver in business is to maximize the tax dollars saved for their clients. Pretty simple driver, or pretty simple KPI, but really came from asking the question around, to what extent can we save our clients tax? How do we minimize our client? How do we legally minimize our clients' taxable tax paid? And so, in interrogating that, everybody in the organization is then focused on this key driver about maximizing the total tax dollars saved for clients. And then they have a look at it, and they've got these really great processes and standards behind the workflow that allow them to guarantee those savings and all the rest of it. But it is laser-like focus on, let's save dollars. We did some work with Starman Farms in the past, and theirs was their main KPI. So their tree nut producers, famous for their almonds and so forth, but theirs was around the total value of an individual tree, the lifetime value of an individual tree, which meant that they needed to choose the right environment, they needed to plant in the right areas, they needed to care for their trees really, really well, they needed to make sure that they were really sustainable in their production. Meant that the team looking after it was trying to minimize the waste and maximize the yield. So every person that had a contribution to understood that this leading KPI for the business was to maximize the yield and the lifetime yield from an individual tree. All right, any questions on that? Jump off, if you do, jump off mute and yell them at me. Nope. All right. So when we look at then individual, on an individual level, each team and then team member need to be able to answer the following. How do I deliver my part on time, on budget, on quality, on relationship to the correct safety standard, to be able to deliver that against the headline KPI? So how do I do my part against those things and influence the big picture KPI? How do I in my role deliver my component across those areas to maximize my impact on that business KPI? And if you start there, the KPIs really cascade out and are quite easy to then focus in on and look at, right, as a receptionist out the front, how do I have an impact on that? I can learn how to balance phone calls. I can be a delight on the phone. I can pass through accurate phone messages. I can be helpful and as cooperative as I can be with incoming inquiries. All the rest of it. Then it goes on to the next person and the next person, and then from a financial point of view, or the accounts person, they can influence this by making sure they manage debtors effectively, getting invoices out as clearly as possible, making sure that the information and the records they keep are accurate. And so once we understand the big picture, our influence or our input into that, our part in that becomes much, much more clear. So when we look at developing positional KPIs, I've got three questions that I often use. And so once we've understood the business level KPI, then we're sitting down with the team or the individual and saying, right, how do we influence that business level KPI? And then I ask these three questions. In practical terms, what separates the best from the rest? What if you've got a team big enough? So for example, if you've got a trade company and you're looking at electricians, for example, what separates the best employees from the rest? What are those best employees doing to deliver more, be invited back more, to generate more value to the organization, to contribute to the organizational level KPI? So what separates the best from the rest? And then you model the master on that. You model the master. And if you don't have a broad range of individuals who you can compare and kind of assess and separate, then you're looking at, okay, whoever started that in that organization or started that role and it now has moved out. You can compare and have a look at what makes a great receptionist, what makes a great salesperson, what makes a great project manager or deliverer. So distinguishing and understanding what separates the best from the rest. The second one is find the tire cost indicator, the leading measure. Let me tell you a quick story about my tire cost. This comes from when I was the general manager at a large electrical contracting company out in Dalby, and we measured everything, and we set brilliant KPIs at an organizational level. We had conversion rates for our tendering team. We had shrinkage rates in our procurement and our stores and warehouses. We measured debtor days in our accounting and financial team, and we moved our debtor days from about an average of somewhere close to 90, 95 back down to an industry leading 35 debtor days. And it just continued. So we measured everything. When it came to our staff and our apprentices, when it came to our tradesmen and apprentices, we had some measures, but it was really hard to find because you didn't see these tradesmen and apprentices. They were out in the field the whole time. They were at people's houses, businesses, out in the bush, doing their thing. So we measured a lot of things as trials, and in the end, it came down to we could tell who the best were and the rest were from understanding how often we had to replace their tires on their vehicle and their running and maintenance costs on their vehicle. And it seemed like, and this was proved over several years of measuring this, there was a direct correlation between those Sparkies who looked after their utes, and in particular, who looked after their tires, and the work that they did and the limited rework that they did. So as some real-term examples, we knew that those tradespeople and apprentices who had vehicles allocated to them, who could get 60 to 70 or even 75,000 kilometers out of a set of tires, were our best. They were our best people. They worked, they delivered the most work, they delivered the least, they were involved in the least rework, and they had the best reputation in the field as from a net promoter and an inquiry back. And those who were only getting, say, 15 to 20,000 kilometers out of a full set of tires, we knew they were the ones that were involved in the most safety incidences. They were the ones doing the most rework. They were the ones with the worst quality outcomes in their job. And it came down to the tire cost. And so we started recruiting, and part of my recruitment strategy was when someone, I'd ask them to drive their personal vehicle to the interview. And one of the very first things that I did was took them out and I said, just show me around your vehicle. And we had a look at the state of the vehicle, the tires, and there were a number of interviews that never got past that stage because I knew that the way that they looked after their personal vehicle was going to be a direct reflection on the way that they did build a switchboard, completed the work, etc. So find your tire cost indicator, that leading measure of what separates a brilliant employee in your organization and the rest. And it was well known at CEC, at Connemine Electric Company out in Dalby, it was well known that these indicators were being used, and it changed behavior a whole lot because you couldn't hide from it. All right, and then asking the question, and this comes back a little bit to that that slide that I showed you around how do I deliver, but it is asking the question around what does this role need to deliver to the role downstream? What do we need to pass on? So when we look at tradespeople, it's about going out and assessing a job, providing a solution, and then documenting what's being done, documenting the parts and the labour that are being used on that, providing that documentation back to the office for them to be able to produce an invoice or a work order or whatever it might be. So it's about you've got two customers. You've got an external customer, the client who wants the work done, and you've got an internal customer who is the next person in line, the administration team who are preparing the invoice from that work. And so what does this role need to deliver to the role downstream is a really great one around asking those questions. All right, I want to pause there and come back to what any questions or things that I want to stop the presentation there and come back and have a conversation about where people are at and what if there's any direct help that they need around developing KPIs. So does anyone have any questions or have specific things they want to look at? Who's got, Teresa, are you wanting to?
Yeah, well, I need to start from scratch. I haven't done any at all. So I just need to find at least one.
Okay.
And where to start.
Share with the team your business in that kind of most basic sense.
Yeah, so I'm just a bookkeeping accounting firm, but mainly bookkeeping. So, and I've just got 2 bookkeepers working for me. So yeah, and I've done nothing as far as KPIs go. I'm doing a lot of work, but not measuring it.
So from a process point of view, and if we boil it down to and say, what is the most important thing that your business does? What is the key thing that your business does or deliver?
Well, lodgements on time, really.
Yep.
Which is not what I want it to be.
No, so it's a good starting place.
Yeah.
But on-time lodgements, and I think that that's kind of a table stake. It's not really it won't be your critical KPI in the future. But tell me what does on-time lodgements mean? So there's accurate, so accuracy goes into that. The need to be able to unpick that. But what is the actual value that the organization, that not your organization, but the client's organization is getting from you getting lodgements on time and accurately?
Well, avoiding audits and penalties for late lodgements.
Yep.
Yeah.
What else do they get? Peace of mind that they've got accurate records to be able to then interrogate and make better business decisions.
Well, yes. What sort of stuff for the, and that's where I want to, like, I don't want the whole lodgements on time to be a thing. I really want the whole, being able to tell businesses, yes, you're all your lodgements are fine, and your cash flow is fine, paying your
So how do you
forward.
Now we're getting somewhere. So how do
Mm.
you know that when you say fine, how do you know that cash flow is fine?
Well, having the time to go out to the clients to do their cash flow and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So I reckon that work that you do is a bit of the accuracy work, the on-time lodgement work, that sort of thing, that becomes table stake. One of the things that will prevent you from lodging on time, and I know we've had this conversation in the past, is waiting for information from a client. So then our question is, how do we improve or reduce or eliminate waiting for a client? How do we make it as easy as possible to do it? And that might be, offering them different levels of access, or helping them. For us personally, it was begging our accountants to give us a better way to capture receipts, because we'd be out in the field, and I'd get fuel and I'd take a receipt, a photo of the receipt, or I'd shove it in my pocket, whatever. And it was revolutionary when they said, no, stop that. HubDoc, this is how you pay, this is how you capture the receipt. One click and it's done. I don't have to write what it is. I don't have to email it off. I don't have to text it through. It just goes straight into the system now. Absolutely amazing. And it's a 2-second thing that is now allowing us to make all of our end of month happen at end of month, and not 3/4 of the way through the next month. And so it's those little things that come from you focusing on, what am I doing here? I'm not just getting lodgements on time. I'm actually helping our businesses make better, more informed decisions. And so when you say cash flow is fine, my mind immediately goes to, well, how do you know it's fine? How do I work? What's the formula for fine in my business? Because some businesses' cash flow is up here, and other businesses' cash flow is down there. It depends on what cycle they are, where they are in the business, in the business growth phase, all the rest of it. So it's I think, the work that you're doing, and that headline KPI or KPQ might be something around, how do we help our businesses make better financial decisions around this stuff? And a part of that is what you do is on time, accurate, and then those accurate lodgements and those things become your table stakes. They become your standards. They become your low benchmarks. Anyone else got any ideas around bookkeeping and accounting for businesses? No, it's all right. Does that make sense, Teresa?
Yeah.
Love to see you interrogate and involve your team in this as well, and also key clients, and say, when we get this stuff right, what does it mean for you? What does us getting this stuff right enable you to do, or do better, or improve?
Yeah.
Because you want to move away from just being one of them compliance things. If a client says, you know what, Teresa, you're awesome because you just get that monkey off my back, and it's just a compliance thing. I'd interrogate that further and say, why? What does it enable? And I bet there's more to that. It means, I can sleep at night. Why? Why do you sleep better at night, knowing that this stuff is done? Because I know that I can pay my bills. Great. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Why is paying bills so important? Because, Teresa, I look after, I take great responsibility in the 15 employees that I've got, and their families, and the community, and I just hate to ever be in a situation where I couldn't pay payroll for a week because of a stupid thing that I didn't see or do, or So it might be that better decisions, peace of mind, the ability to sleep at night, right? If those are our KPIs, then we're looking at how do we influence that? And that's what drives not just compliance or meet bare minimum standard. That's what drives our team to go, well, how do I make this easier for our clients?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Fantastic.
Anyone else? Tanya, do you know what your business level KPIs are?
Alistair, we don't actually have any at the moment. So that's something that from today's workshop, we've got a strategic planning session coming up in October.
Yep.
So some of the pre-work that we'll look at doing on the back of this will be having a look at what that looks like for us. So
yeah, nice. How do we measure success? What is success for us? What is our that key process? What's the backbone of our business, and how do we then start measuring or understanding when we're winning or when we're losing?
Absolutely. So, and in the background, we're working on productivity targets for our frontline staff out in the field. So we're kind of sort of starting backwards and moving forward. So
yeah. And that's an interesting point, Tanya, and thanks for raising that. It can sometimes be easier, and especially Teresa, like maybe in your area as well, looking at, right, what does productivity at a individual level or at a team level look like? How do we maximize productivity, efficiency? What does our output look like? And then you can, if that's easier to understand, then you're asking the question, well, what does that mean for the organization? What does that productivity actually do for the organization? So in our case, there's in professional services, you look at accountants, lawyers, there's been a big tradition in measuring billable hours per day. And so you work a 7.6 hour day and we want you to bill 5.5 or 6 hours a day. Productivity. Well, what does that actually mean? What does that do? Well, it means that we get to our revenue targets for that. Revenue targets, what does that mean? That headline amount. It means we can pay staff, and it means we can develop assets. And you interrogate that further and further and further, and then you understand actually our headline KPI for our organization in professional services is about having a positive impact on the working lives of as many people as we can. So we need to be productive and efficient at that. But it's not just productive in terms of output. I don't care about our team's ability to bill hours per day. It's actually the value of what we're producing. So if Jess sits there and is able to do a contract of employment in half the time, and that value, she's doubled that value if the quality and all the rest of it, those standards still exist, but the value is increased is double. That's what we're looking for. And so it's interesting. Start where you like. I like going, what is the purpose of the organization, and working down. But Tanya, you raise a really good point. If you're already working on some productivity goals, you can extrapolate that up and ask yourself the question, what are we trying to achieve by hitting this productivity? And then it loops around.
Thank you.
No worries at all. Any other questions? So if you want those, we've got a spreadsheet with the 75, Bernard Mars 75, and we've probably expanded them. Key performance questions, key performance indicators, and in a lot of the cases, the formulas that go with that. Very happy to share that stuff. So if you're interested in that, please email Eloise, and she'll get that out to you. And we'll also make this this available to those who registered previously. All right. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks for making it. I hope that there was some useful stuff in there, and have a great afternoon. See you all.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Jen.
Alistair.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks, Alistair.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, Alistair.
Oh, hey, Catherine, no worries. I'm sorry that you couldn't hear us at the beginning. We can absolutely get you a recording of this.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No worries.